The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jolene Schaefer, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Facilitate Tax Compliance with Sage 100 Payroll 2.20 by Monica Byrne of SWK Technologies. A little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise down. However, you can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar. To submit a question, look for the questions section in your GoToWebinar. We will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. We are recording this presentation and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees as well as to those who registered but were not able to attend. Please take a moment at the end of the presentation to answer our 2-question survey. With that said, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to attend our webinar. We're here to help you get the most out of your software solutions and help you find an easier way to run your business by providing you software and industry knowledge, tools, and support whenever you need it. So whether you're here doing research for a new solution or you're just here to learn, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions throughout the webinar. Lastly, as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. So we encourage you to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Monica.
Hi, everyone. As Jolene mentioned, my name is Monica Byrne. I'm a senior consultant here at SWK for the Sage 100 product line. I've been supporting clients with Sage 100 for about 15 years now. Today, we're here to talk about tax compliance related to Sage 100 Payroll 2.20. A lot of this information also applies to 2.19 and 2.18, but it's essentially the new business framework or the rewrite of the payroll module for Sage 100. I know it's probably not the most exciting topic. However, Sage continually makes improvements to make it easier for you, so that is truly the exciting part. This new Sage 100 payroll is really nice, really slick as far as tax compliance is concerned. When I first started working with Sage 100, the payroll was archaic. There was a lot of maintenance required for tax tables and rates. Sometimes key tax updates were not available until the following quarter. Additionally, the printing of forms such as W-2s, 941s, and other payroll reporting was difficult at best. If you worked through it on one of those old versions, you might remember that the forms, things didn't line up appropriately in the forms. You would buy the pre-printed forms and print on them, and we had a lot of alignment issues and such. All of that is a thing of the past, and we're going to talk more today about that compliance stuff. So with Sage 100 Payroll 2.20, that has all changed. All the stuff I mentioned earlier has all changed. Sage 100 now uses something called SPA. So this is our first important piece, is how everything is calculated and how you know that the information is accurate in your payroll system at all times. Previously, that was a concern, especially with quarterly tax updates. But Sage is now using what I mentioned, something called SPA, and it's called a Sage Payroll Calculation Engine. I'm not sure how the acronym came to be, but this is a cloud service hosted in Azure. This works in conjunction with Sage Payroll Compliance Data, or CLAD. CLAD incorporates the tax rates, limits, and tax calculation rules for the United States. So simply, these two items take data from Sage 100 and calculate your payroll taxes. The data it uses has no personally identifiable information and contains everything the payroll engine needs to completely calculate the taxes for the current pay run. So essentially what Sage is doing is gathering the information that is necessary to calculate taxes, sending it to this SPA, which is the payroll calculation engine, and that is returning the real-time tax data based on all the updates already being applied. So the information provided to the payroll engine service, called a payload, is mostly a series of codes and numbers to identify and calculate all the tax data necessary so that you know you're getting an accurate payroll. Although the tax rates, rules, and et cetera are housed in the engine, so they're actually housed in that engine in the cloud, you will receive automatic payroll tax updates in Sage now. So that piece is new with this payroll rewrite, because previously you would have to have updates installed. They typically were quarterly, so they weren't real time or timely in some cases. So now you're going to be getting those updates. This updates the structure. So these tax updates, even though it appears as a payroll update, It's not necessarily a tax update. Those are happening in the cloud. But what's happening is it updates the structure and tables needed to cross-reference the information between Sage 100 and the SPA. So essentially what happens is the Sage 100 system will ask the SPA if anything has changed, such as does Massachusetts have a new filing status, or did a new tax get added to a county in New York State? If the answer is yes, the Sage 100 payroll user will receive a message that a payroll tax update is available. So this can simply mean there was a new tax added or maybe even removed or a new filing status. It could be in states that don't even affect your payroll. As such, it may not result in a change for your company specifically. We do recommend keeping these updates current though, so that we can catch all the updates as they come through. This functionality is so much better and more timely than the prior quarterly or yearly updates that we used to provide. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the setup just to show you how the tax calculation happens in Sage 100 now so that you get an idea. So we're going to go through some setup areas. We're not necessarily going to enter a payroll or anything, but we're going to talk about how the tax is calculated. So the first thing is we talked a little bit about updates. So when running a payroll, if prompted to install an update, you can review the update and determine if you need to install it prior to your payroll. So although we recommend keeping these updates current, it is possible if you're in the middle of a payroll that you don't want to take the time to run an update. And that's perfectly fine. You can even check the update to see what's available in the update so you can decide if you need to do that now or later as desired. So there is a new feature under payroll utilities called Payroll Tax Update Report. And this Payroll Tax Update Report will show you what, if there's an update out there, what the update is, or you can also see previously installed updates. So you'll see here in mine, I have some previously installed updates that I can review. So if I look at this one from 6/17, for instance, I can preview this report and see what those previously installed updates are. If there's a pending update, I'll also have the option to run a report for the pending update. So you'll see here a couple tax rules were added, and we'll talk about tax rules a little bit later. Student loan repayment benefits, educational employer provided benefit. So those are the only things that were in this particular update for 6/17. So that's the way you can always do that. And you'll notice if I go to payroll tax update, it'll say click proceed to download and install the latest update. So if there is a latest update, you'll see that it's out here. It does say a payroll run is in progress and payroll data entry in one or more companies. And if I click on more info, it'll also give me that information. So I have a payroll run, something in payroll data entry in a demo company called ABC. No big deal. I can actually say proceed here if there was a update that I wanted to apply, or I can cancel this, or I can say reset it. So this is resetting it so that the next time I come in, I'll get prompted for this payroll update. Now, if you don't apply a payroll update, it's important to note that it will prompt you to apply that update when you enter the payroll the next time anyways. It'll actually prompt you, let's say you log out of Sage and go back in and you go into employee maintenance or something, it'll prompt you then that a payroll tax update is available. So it's constantly going to be reminding you that the update is available and that you can install that update at your convenience. A couple other great new features in Payroll 2.2 that help you stay tax compliant are service notification maintenance and the payroll status check utility. So the first one we'll take a look at is notifications. For a long time now, Sage 100 users have been baffled by update notifications, like where are they coming from, who are they going to, why aren't I receiving them? So there is a new task under the setup menu of Payroll called service notification maintenance. And here we can actually keep a list of who we want important emails related to our payroll from Sage to come to. So you can put as many users in here as you would like. You can put the email address right in here. Now there is a user email address field in the user file in Sage 100. We didn't previously have that, so a lot of times it's not populated, but you can also put an alternate email address in here as well. Previously, you'd have to call Sage and say, who are my notifications going to, have them change the address and those kinds of things. Now you know that you're going to get the information that you need in a timely manner, and it's going to be going to the right person. And you'll see up at the top, it does say that they send notifications for scheduled maintenance, unplanned outages, other impacts to the use of the Sage service, the payroll tax calculation engine. Okay, the next one we want to look at is the status check utility. So Sage has given you a way in Payroll 2.20 to find out if you have everything set up appropriately. So that's has long been a concern of a lot of our clients is, hey, do I have everything set up appropriately? Should I be doing something different? Am I missing anything? Sometimes they wouldn't find that out until they went to update a payroll, and it would say you have errors because something wasn't set up properly or something changed and you didn't react to that change. So there is a payroll status check utility now, and that's under the payroll utilities. And you'll see there's a couple things you can check. You can check setup things. You can check missing other local taxes. So I'm going to run this for the setup just to show you what it looks like. I ran this yesterday preparing for this webinar and realized I had errors, but I wanted to wait to show you guys. I didn't want to clear those errors because I wanted to show you what happened. So you'll see here, it's going through all the different setups, earnings codes, deduction codes, departments, any place that you have to put a general ledger account in, or you have to add a new general ledger account, something like that is going to give you a warning. So you'll see here under my company tax groups, I have a warning, and it is telling me I'm missing zero account values, and it'll tell you exactly where you're missing it. So this is in the company tax groups. So if I go to company tax groups in the payroll setup menu, I will be able to go to each of these states and fix those appropriate values. Additionally, I can drill down directly from here right into it. So you'll see this takes me directly to company tax group setup, and it'll show me where I'm missing something. Now, it is common that you might not use what's missing. So maybe there is no employee unemployment in California. I can leave that blank if I know I'm not doing anything with that, just so that you know. And then there's an additional area in the tax rates that you have to maintain, which is related to the unemployment on the tax rates tab. So all other rates other than the state unemployment rates are being maintained by the Sage system, so you don't have to worry about those rates or what's happening with those rates. Also, you'll see that I had errors in my tax profiles. So if I look here, it's going to say tax profile is not current with CLAD data. That CLAD data is that data that is incorporating all that data related to payroll tax laws and all of that for the United States. And all I have to do to simply fix these is there's a fix button over here, and it'll go and I can click fix on each one, and it'll apply the appropriate fix for these. You'll see it'll say it was fixed successfully, and I can just go through those. So the next time I come in, these won't be here. And all that's simply doing is syncing up that CLAD data with Sage 100. So this is key. You also have missing other local taxes utility. So if there should be local taxes related to an employee, it'll give you a warning on that. So you'll see it's listing some of my employee numbers, and it'll give you a warning. I don't have this federal tax group set up. Now these are, and we'll look at these a little bit later, but these are related to COVID-19 and all the legislation related to that, so they're all new. So it's important to note that sometimes you'll need new general ledger account information if there's tax law changes and it's requiring a posting based on that. So that's why these are coming up and asking us to fill in the appropriate information, because they're all new related to the COVID-19 legislation. Okay, so let's take a look at tax profile maintenance, because that's the next key to show you how all of this is automated and connects your data together. So in tax profile maintenance, I'm just going to pull up one of our tax profiles here. So you notice this, this is a California tax profile. The description is works and lives in California. So we can set up separate tax profiles depending on our situations and what our employees' situations are. So if we have an employee that lives in one state and works in another, we can actually set that up to tax appropriately. And we do that by the location type down here. So that allows us to remain tax compliant as well. It was tricky in the previous payroll to be able to handle that work reside kind of situation, but we can here. So you'll notice under our tax location code, we have California, and then we say that this is a work and live in California situation. When I put in the tax location code and choose the location type, on the right-hand side under tax group details, you're going to see all of the items come up that could be taxed if the employee met the criteria to be taxed for it. So for instance, I have this non-resident stock options bonus unchecked. I could check that if I wanted to. If my employee was a non-resident and had this stock options bonus in a payroll, then that would be that tax would be applied. But if my employee was not a non-resident, that would not be applicable, so it wouldn't apply to that. And please note, you can have multiple profiles per state depending on your employee situation. So that's kind of the beauty of these tax profiles now. For example, this California profile, like we said, is a live and reside. You can also use these tax profiles in other ways as well to segregate your employees. So in some states, students can't be charged certain taxes. So you might have a California student profile, and then over on the right-hand side, you would uncheck the taxes that are not applicable to a student. And the key to all of this is these tax profiles are assigned to our employees. So when we assign these tax profiles to our employees, that will designate how their taxes are calculated. So pretty interesting here. So we have some control over these kinds of things. And you'll see listed in here are like tip wages, things like that. So if you don't do tip wages, you could always uncheck anything related to tip wages. But like I said, if it's not applicable, if you don't have any tip wages in a payroll, it won't be applied for that anyways. So once these tax profiles are defined and we assign them to an employee, that's when everything starts to come together. So if we go to employee maintenance, and I'm just going to open up an employee here, you'll see Lori Lane, and if I go to her taxes tab, I have her default tax profile. She's in Colorado. And then I also have tax locations at the bottom, so I can have a separate residence and work tax location as well. It's also good to know at this point that filing statuses have been updated in Sage 100, and they are updated automatically, either with a payroll update or an update that's automatically driven to Sage users. And those happen relatively quickly now. In prior years, before we had this kind of automated updates of taxes and things, you know, it might have been the following quarter before you were able to get an update for those filing statuses. So this accounts for the new W-4 regulations. So you'll see here under the federal, these are all the W-4 regulations or W-4 options that are available now with the new 2020 W-4 regulations. So you'll see here, if I choose one of these new 2020 or later ones, and I go over here to the right, I'm now asked to put in an amount rather than, you'll see there's an override amount and an override percent rather than a number of exemptions. And you'll see here in the states as well, they will follow that also. So if there are separate ones for the states, you'll see that there's filing status for each of the states here as well. And those will be updated appropriately as the states update those filing statuses. Some states have not adopted the new W-4 filing statuses yet, so you'll still see those as they typically were in the past. Okay, the next step on our tour of how tax compliance is made easy in Payroll 2.2 are deduction codes and earnings codes. So you'll see if I close here and I'm going to open earnings code maintenance, just an additional way in which they tie together. I'm going to open one of these and open our tax rules. So you'll see here that we have tax rules available to us now, and these are defined in earnings code maintenance. So for each earning code or deduction code that is taxable on the deduction code side or exempt from taxes, you will now match it to a tax rule. And the tax rule determines which taxes the selected earnings or deduction code is subject to. As you probably know, bonus wages are taxed differently than regular wages, and therefore there's an option for each. So you'll see here, here's the bonus wages. There's no taxes. We also have regular wages in there. So all of those are available to us now. And that's how the tax calculation engine determines how to calculate the taxes and make sure that you're in tax compliant and calculating your taxes accurately. I'll show you one on the deduction code side as well. So if I go to deduction code maintenance, and we'll take a look at the dental deduction code, you'll see that this deduction type is a cafeteria plan. So deduction types determine the tax impact of a deduction. In this example, we're looking at the cafeteria plan, which may or may not be taxable depending on when it is deducted, pre or post tax. The tax rule defines how taxes will or will not be applied. And that's these tax rules down here. So you might ask me, how do I know the impact of a tax rule? And that's a really, really good question. So you need to know what these tax rules are going to do in order to match them up to your deduction codes and earnings codes. So Sage has added an option called tax rule inquiry. It looks like binoculars in earnings codes or deduction code maintenance. So you'll see it here in the tax rule inquiry right here. So if I choose a tax profile, for instance, I'm just going to choose this one. And then you'll see I'm looking at a specific deduction tax rule, the one that I happen to be looking at in my dental area. But I can actually add further rules to this to compare them. So let's say I wanted to compare, this one and this one and this one. I can add them all into my tax rules, and then I can hit search, and it's going to tell me how these tax rules, I'm looking at earnings tax rules versus deduction tax rules. It will tell me how these are applying taxes. So let me look at a different one here that's actually going to bring up something for you. And I'm going to add all of our deduction rules so you guys can see what it looks like. And you'll see here what happens is I added all the deduction rules, but you can see if I scroll to the top, it might make more sense for you guys. But federal, you'll see tip income. So if I have tip income and any of these deductions have this tax rule, then taxes will be applied. If I have federal regular income tax, taxes will be applied to all of these tax rules. So you can look, obviously you can see, you can look at a granular section, you can look at a large section. You'll see some of these that are listed in here, such as this one, our catch-up deduction is not listed in here, so it would not be taxed if the deduction was assigned this 80501 tax rule. And if you look at just one deduction code, like let's remove a bunch of them, and let's just look at the first one here, you'll see here, it's even a little easier to just look at one. You'll see it's going to deduct for federal regular income tax. If there's supplemental income, it's going to deduct for that. So Wisconsin is going to deduct for that. So we could go and look at all of our states in our tax profiles and see what they're going to deduct based on what we've chosen. So that's kind of how we match up. And obviously, once you get this set up, unless there's anything new, it's going to remain set up the same way. We, of course, can advise you how to match those up, but your best option would be to talk to your accountant, your tax accountant, a legal advisor, those kinds of things, in order to determine how to match those up, earnings codes and deduction codes with tax rules. But once those are matched up, that's kind of the beauty of this payroll tax engine to calculate appropriately, because once those are matched up, then your taxes are going to come in accurately to your payroll every single time. So last but not least, in this section of the webinar, we can't discuss tax compliance without discussing governmental reporting, such as W-2s, 941s, etc. So I am going to go to the payroll period end menu and go to our federal and state tax reporting. All of the federal and state tax reporting in Sage 100 is driven by Atrix. Atrix is a well-known tax compliance software, and Sage contracted with them to ensure compliance with forms and reporting. Remember, I mentioned earlier in our previous payroll versions, it was very difficult to print the appropriate W-2s and have them all line up and such. So I just wanted to give you a little example of how this works. Atrix is free to use with your Sage 100 software. However, you can e-file right through the Atrix interface for a fee. So you'll see once we go in here, there are some options as to allowing them to mail some things for you, to e-file for you, those kinds of things. To print your own documents are always free with Sage 100, but if you want to take advantage of the e-file services, they will collect payment during the process. The fee is calculated based on the number of employees and other factors, and pricing is going to be provided to you as you go through this process as well, so you would know exactly what you were looking at. So in this particular example, I'm just going to show you guys a W-2. Let's go down here and choose our W-2. I'm going to do it for one employee, one particular employee that I wanted to show you, and I'm going to say proceed. So you'll see that it says processing employees, and this is just essentially a walkthrough wizard. When you go through here, sometimes it'll ask you for a forms update. So if you haven't updated your forms and the government has made changes to forms, Atrix is keeping those updated in a real-time format. So for instance, I'm going to show you a little later our 941s related to COVID-19 legislation. And when I show you those, you'll see that information has been added to those forms for those legislations. And Atrix is updating those. So when you go in, if there is an update to forms, it'll go through and do this update that it's doing right now. You'll see that there is an update, which is interesting because I ran this update yesterday. And there are some further updates today for federal forms, Ohio and Oregon forms. So and it'll just tell you what it is that it's going to update, and then you just say next, and it's going to do that update. So we'll just give that a moment to do the update. There you go. The update is complete. That simple. So now you know you have the latest tax forms available to you in the Atrix software. So although you launch this software from the Sage 100 menu, you are actually launching an Atrix program, and I'll show you how that works when we get in there, when it gives us the information. So this is just a warning. So it will give you a mismatch warning if something's going on. I'm actually running this for period 2020. But we only have 2019 forms, of course, because we don't have W-2s available from the government yet for 2020. So that's fine. That's fine for this demo purposes, but you'd want to pay attention to that. We can test drive this software, or we can start processing our W-2s. Either way, you can still cancel out after and not file anything, of course. So I'm just going to do the regular one. It'll bring your company EIN, FEIN, your federal identification number, over from Sage 100. So basically, through these screens as you walk through, you're kind of verifying the information. So I'm using a single payroll data file for this EIN. It'll come up with information from your company master in Sage 100, so company maintenance. It'll bring in your company name and addresses and all of that. I'm going to say next. I am filing for my company employer. Next. This is the state withholding and state unemployment, our tax account numbers with that particular state, and those will come in from Sage as well. Do you have any employees who are exempt from any part of the Medicare, Social Security taxes? All of these questions you have to look through. I won't read them all now, but you just kind of have to look through, answer them appropriately. If you want a control number in the W-2, you can put that here. What kind of payer are you? We're a 941 payer. And then I'm going to say next. Now, Atrix opens something that is kind of like a spreadsheet. It's an Excel kind of format. So you'll see here, it's going to bring up my employee information. If there's any problems with this information, Atrix is checking that, and it's going to let you know. I picked this particular lady, demo lady, for because I think she has some issues and I wanted to show you how that works. So another way that Sage 100 helps you stay tax compliant is by allowing you to use this Atrix system, which is going to provide you information on whether or not you're being compliant as far as your forms and government reporting go as well. So I'm going to keep clicking next here, and you'll see what happened here. When you see something in red, it's a warning that something is wrong here. So it's going to say, and it'll give you the specific error. If box 5 Medicaid wages is less than the Social Security wage limit, then box 3 Social Security wages plus box 7 must equal box 5 Medicare wages. So it's telling you exactly what should happen related to these boxes. So you'll see my Medicare wages and my, let's look at the other boxes here, box 7, my Social Security tips, box 5, my Medicare wages, and it also mentions box 3. So let's go ahead and say we're going to go back and correct it, and we're going to look at our box 3. So somehow our wages got off, and they should be matching. So we can always adjust these if necessary. So you'll see here we have Social Security wages, 30,000, Medicare wages, 30,000. So now I'm going to click next and see if that'll allow us to go by. You'll see it doesn't. Now, typically we don't have a lot of issues with employees like this related to W-2s. This is a demo company, so we do a lot of strange stuff in here. So I just wanted to use this as an example of what could happen. Most times when I'm working with clients and doing their W-2s, their information is accurate. They've obviously taxed the user appropriately, so they don't have to worry about this. So I would say here the same thing, go back and correct. So box 3, Social Security wages plus box 7 must be within $1 of box 4, Social Security. So that's just a warning. So if you feel that it's okay and it's just a warning, I'm just going to continue without correcting. And then I'm going to go to my next step. So you'll see how it kind of guides you to make sure that you're tax compliant and that you fall within the guidelines that it knows about. So I'm still going to continue without correcting, and then we get into our W-2 preparing options. So here, complete W-2 e-file services, you'll say next. So if I don't want to file, if I do want to file, if I want Atrix to e-file for me, you'll see it comes up with the information. I only have one employee right now. It's charging me $24.95 because that's the minimum cost. But if I had, 25 employees, it would be $1.15 per employee. In order for them to do the complete e-filing service, tells us exactly what the e-filing service includes. And if I wanted to take advantage of that and click next, it would prompt me for payment information later on. Otherwise, when I go to other options, I can do everything that I told you, like print everything for free. So I want to print my employee W-2s, and I want to print my federal W-2s and W-3s and print my state information, and all of that is free. So you'll notice now it's all zero. If you want to print everything, there is never a cost. So I'm going to say next to all of that, review my data, and now it's going to prepare my documents. And you'll see it's a W-2. And then as I go through here, if I were to go through each step, it would give me all of the information related to, and I'm not going to print them right now, but it'll load the next report. So my W-2s and W-4s, all of those will come through, or W-3s, sorry, all will come through as I go through this process. So you'll see here's my W-2s again. This is my, and it'll tell you what, this is my employee W-2 up at the top. So as I click and keep moving through, it's going to say, now here's my employer W-2. So that's what it's loading right now is my employer W-2. And so on and so forth. So you can see how Atrix is, here's your 941 federal W-2, but you can see how Atrix is helping Sage 100 be tax compliant and provide you with the latest and greatest tax forms so that you know you're in compliance with the tax regulations related to payroll. Okay, I'm going to close these now. And I could go back into that process. I'm going to close this, but I could go back into that process and start it up at any time again. I could save my progress if I was working on it and needed to go back. All of those types of convenience features are available there as well. Okay, so now that we've discussed all the ways Sage 100 Payroll 2.20 fosters payroll tax compliance, let's take a look at some more specific changes related to the latest legislation due to COVID-19. I know it's been a crazy time and there has been a lot for our clients to deal with specifically related to payroll, so many things changing so quickly. And Sage is trying to do its best to keep up on that, along with obviously the payroll calculation engine and Atrix, all working together to coordinate the appropriate information that's needed for that legislation. They did react quickly to the changing tax environment though, and they've added various items in payroll to assist you with calculating your tax credits related to the legislation. So we do have some new tax rules related to this legislation, so I just wanted to show you that. So if I go to tax rule inquiry, so this tax rule inquiry is the same place I went to when I was looking up the tax rules from earnings code maintenance or deductions code maintenance when I chose the binoculars there. So I'm just going to choose a tax profile here. And I'm going to go do a tax rule inquiry and show you the new ones that are available. So this is showing all of them. But basically at the bottom of the earnings code, we have some specifically related to the legislation for COVID-19. And those are, say, this one, 800121, and that's for emergency paid sick leave self. And then 800125, emergency paid sick leave for others. And then there's also the 800123 that's related to the emergency paid family leave and medical leave. So for more info on when to use each code, you can find the details of the legislation on www.congress.gov. And as always, you can contact your accountant, tax professional, or legal advisor for more information and guidance as to when to use each of these tax codes. So these new tax rules may look familiar as they're now available in tax profile maintenance as well. So if we go to tax profile maintenance, and I'm just going to look at Delaware for a moment, you'll see in here we have some federal stuff, these emergency PFML, emergency PSLS. All of these are new related to the COVID-19 legislation or the CARES Act. So you have to actually go into your tax profiles and select those as an option in your company or in your profile so that those can be calculated appropriately when you do a payroll related to those. So that's the first thing that's important, is to make sure when new things are added to the tax profile that we actually go in and check these boxes to allow them to be calculated for an employee that has that particular tax profile. And then we would create earnings codes related to those new tax rules. And those new tax rules, so that those earnings codes will be used in the payroll that will allow those new tax rules to calculate appropriately. So you'll see here that I created a tax rule called 92. I just called it COVID-19 PFML. You could call it whatever you wanted to. And you'll notice that it's a miscellaneous. We assign a miscellaneous earnings type to that. And then we apply the tax rule that's related to that. So this is the paid family leave, the emergency paid family leave related to the COVID-19 legislation. Now, when we run our payrolls and use the appropriate earnings codes, our information will be tracked accordingly. Which leads me to some reporting. So Sage has added some reporting to help you calculate the information needed when you're filling out information for your COVID-19 relief information and things like that. So here's a couple of reports that are available now. First is the emergency leave worksheet. So you'll see that's at the bottom here. And when you go into the emergency leave worksheet, of course, it's going to give you a little warning code. This worksheet includes earning codes set up with these tax rules. So that means you would have had to have had a payroll using those tax rules in order for them to show up on this report. And then there are deduction codes related to those earnings codes. which are like your 401ks, health insurance, those kinds of things are related to that. And so what we have to do when we run this report is we have to select our qualified health plan deductions. So I would go through here and say, what are my qualified health plan deductions? So I would just go through and start selecting all of those. So that I don't have to go through the list, I'm going to select them all, but of course you would select appropriately based on your company's setup and your company's offerings. So I'm going to say okay here, and I'm going to preview this qualified emergency leave worksheet. And then you'll see when let me expand that a little so you can see it. But you'll see we have some payrolls related to those. So we had some employees take advantage of some of these programs. In particular, they took advantage of the qualified emergency Social Security, CFML wages. And you'll see this tracks the qualified wages for each category related to those health expenses. And then because you'll see the health expenses are there on the right as well. So all the information that you'll need. So the qualified sick and family leave wages and health plan expenses can be manually entered on the Form 941 worksheet in the federal and state tax reporting. So we're going to look at that shortly. Additionally, we have a new employee retention credit worksheet. So that's the other one. And let's go back here. Here's our employee retention credit worksheet. This will help you determine your qualified wages up to the maximum limit and expenses for the employee retention credit related to the CARES Act. You'll have a warning again. And then, of course, we can select our qualified earnings and our qualified health deductions. So I'm just going to select them all just so that I get the information that I want on the report. And then I'm going to preview it. But you would take the time to select the appropriate qualified earnings and health plans. And then you'll see here when I go ahead and open this, I'm going to have all of this come through as well. For each employee, it's going to show each check that falls within the range of the COVID-19 legislation. So you'll see here the first check that falls in that range is 3/13/2020, and it'll give you all of that information related to the qualified plans, all of this. This also can be entered into the 941. So the qualified wages for the quarter can be manually entered into the 941 as well. And we're going to look at the 941 in a minute so that I can show you where you would put that information. But all the information will be on that report so that you can just enter the information in as necessary on the form. Additionally, SAGE has updated the quarterly tax report. Any emergency sick or family leave wages paid under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act that are subject to Medicare tax are combined with regular Medicare wages. So when I preview this now, you're going to notice that some of the column headings on the quarterly tax report have been changed to reflect that change. So it's not just including Medicare wages anymore. It's now including other wages. So you'll see that it'll say withholding other tax. The other tax would be the tax related to those earnings codes that we had looked at before and those tax rules related to the COVID-19 legislation. As I mentioned earlier, from the new payroll reports, tracking your important COVID-19 legislation information, this information can be added to your 941s manually. So we just saw a couple of the reports that are going to help us get that information, that we need that key information to fill out our 941s appropriately and get the appropriate tax relief or benefits that are available to us. So I'm going to show you now, by going back into federal and state tax reporting, a 941 and where that information is entered. So if I go in here and I choose my 941 report, oh, I don't want the adjusted 941 report, but let's do a regular 941 report. So I'm going to do a 941 report, and I'm going to say proceed here. It's going to process my employees for that report. And here it comes. So here's our 941. And it did give me some warnings there as to what we have available to us. So we can review and edit the report. Please complete the required red fields. So it'll show you where the information is needed. And you'll see here, when we go to page 3, there's information here about the COVID-19 legislation and all the appropriate relief acts. So you'll see here, if your business has closed or you stopped paying wages, enter the final date you paid wages. So you can put whatever in here, whatever is appropriate in here, obviously. Check the appropriate information, which opens up these fields. And this is where you would get the information from the reporting that Sage provides on the payroll reports menu. In order to file your 941s appropriately so that you can take advantage of anything that's available to your company. So as you can see with Payroll 2.20, Sage has invested a lot of time and effort in rewriting this to make it easier for the end user to have the updates that you need real time or pretty quickly thereafter, and so that they can respond quickly to changes in government forms and, especially with all this COVID-19 legislation. If without this Payroll 2.20, it would have been very difficult to keep up with all that legislation. As tax tables were maintained within Sage 100 and they weren't in a calculation engine, and there was so much effort to maintain that information previously. Now it's all maintained for you, and it's all automatic, and the updates are pushed out to you real time. And you'll receive those prompts when you go to enter your payroll and tax update is available, and you'll be able to take advantage of that additional functionality right away, which is really the key of all of this, is to be tax compliant and to be able to respond quickly to the government's changes. So that's what I have for you today related to Sage 100 Payroll 2.20 tax compliance and, of course, the COVID-19 regulations or legislation. If you have any questions, I think Jolene's going to take over for us and guide us through some questions if you have any. I do have some documentation on a lot of this information that I've given today, and I think that's going to be sent out after the webinar.
Thank you, Monica. We'll now open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please enter them into the questions section of your GoToWebinar. While we are not able to give specific tax legal answers, we can answer any general or high-level questions you have, and we'll give that a minute in case any come through. And just a reminder, everyone, we do have a subject matter expert here. This is a great opportunity to have your questions answered in real time. Okay, the first one says, we created our own earnings code to track the emergency sick leave. Can I fill the 941 forms manually with the emergency sick leave wages?
Good question, very good question. Yes, you can fill those in manually. So one thing I didn't mention is when you're in the Atrix software, so when you're in your federal and state reporting area, once you're in that Atrix software, you can make changes there. Those changes do not write back to Sage 100, but it's perfect in a situation like this where you are tracking it separately. We have a boatload of clients that had to provide a workaround since the previous payroll didn't have it, didn't accommodate for the paid family leave. So we do have a lot of clients who have to do that. So the answer is yes.
And to tack on to that, they replied, do you have a webinar to teach us how to do that?
Oh, interesting. We don't have a webinar at the moment to teach you how to do that, but if you work with a consultant here at SWK or not, or you don't know who your consultant is here at SWK, we can certainly get you a consultant that can show you how to do that. So I don't know, Jolene, if you can track that and get them connected.
Yep, we'll follow up with you after the webinar for that. Perfect, and that looks like all the questions that have come through, so thank you so much, Monica, for your time and for being here today.
Sure, thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too, bye-bye.